Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Lunatic Creative Podcast. I'm Sean Davis, and I am also with
Jason Paul.
So today, this is my little exclusive X-Men episode. There's a bunch of our fans out there who love the X-Men, and there's so many different characters. Lots of comic book fans should think that the Marvel Universe should be split up into Marvel, X-Men, and DC. So we're just going to go through some great X-Men moments, and in terms of the longevity of X-Men.
Why do they think that? Is it because of the movie deal, or is...
What, in terms of breaking it down in comics?
Yeah, or did people think that before the movies came out?
Before the movies came out.
So, like, the X-Men...
It should
big. It's
exactly.
so big that it deserves its own little universe.
Correct. So your X-Men are so big, and half the time people love and say, "Oh, this is one of my favorite Marvel characters." More or less likely, that person that they like is almost entirely a mutant. So we're gonna go over. I have some little trivia we're gonna do at the end, and we're just gonna talk about the X-Men and the longevity that X-Men has brought to the fans, and what's to come within the new X-Men universe with the X-Men Apocalypse movie. So we're going to start off with probably one of the fan favorites, which is the 1994 X-Men animated series. Probably one of the best animated series alongside the Fox Kids, Warner Brothers, Batman animated series. Most of those people who like Batman will probably say they love the X-Men series. X-Men series was probably one of the greatest cartoons of all time. Each of the characters were in their original costumes, which is cool as a huge fan. Tip to the hat to the fans who wanted to see those particular things. Probably my favorite character, and I'm going to ask you this too, J. Paul, probably my two favorite characters with the animated X-Men were without a doubt the scenes between Gambit and Rogue. There was a huge...
And that was, that series is a lot of people, that is X-Men to a lot of people. People our age, that's like how I was introduced to it. It was colorful, it looked 90s. And as you can tell from like the comics, is that the shift in Wolverine's yellow and blue? Because there's some animated stuff before that when he was in like the brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I think the animated series sort of kicked off our generation's love of it. And Gambit, he didn't even debut as a character until the mid-90s, right?
Yeah, the character itself came out in the issue where basically Rogue, he saves Storm. And that's the introduction of Gambit. She crashes or something happens. I'm not entirely all up to date with that particular original storyline. But he saves Storm from crashing into the good old Louisiana
Bayou.
The Louisiana Bayou. And the cover is great for Gambit's first appearance. He actually has Storm hoisted over his shoulders, carrying her out. But the relationship between Gambit and Rogue is one of the coolest in the comics. It shows that love-hate relationship. She teases him, doesn't act like she likes him, but they obviously love each other. And Gambit is always trying to give him his sweet pun lines and try to give her a kiss. There's actually a really cool YouTube video, and you can just look up Gambit and Rogue 90s X-Men, and it's a little synopsis of all their encounters with one another, which are great. And the reason why Gambit is one of my favorite characters, because he is a little bit of an anti-hero. He does have a dark side to him. He is a gambler. He's a rogue. And, you know, he kind of fights for himself, kind of like Wolverine does. And that's why I appreciate the Gambit character. He has a bow staff, which is pretty badass. Reminiscence of Donatello from the Ninja Turtles, which is another one of my favorite characters. And being able to manipulate kinetic energy and throw his deck of cards, because he is a gambler. Where Rogue's powers are just to absorb any energy. So you would assume that he would be able to have an ease of kissing Rogue because she can just consume that kinetic energy. So probably my favorite character, two favorite characters within the X-Men animated cartoons. What about you, J. Paul?
Well, my favorite was Wolverine because he popped first. Like that show, the movies, that character's badass. I don't think anybody can argue the badassness of Wolverine. His look was very distinctive. The claws out of the hands. Again, the color scheme of the 90s. But my second was definitely Gambit. It was the accent. It was the comics that went along with it. It was somebody, even my mom liked Gambit because he was from the South. It was a very... It wasn't just... It was one of the, I guess, comic book characters that, like, has, like, oh, he's from this part of America, and it's distinctive, and it's not just sort of a throwaway. That Peter Parker's from Queens, but he doesn't seem like...
There's no accent.
City kid. There's no accent. But Gambit sort of personified an entire part of the country. I think he was a modern hero. There were a lot of things were thought into him more than just like how he'd read on the page. It was, how is he going to be in an animated series? Well, he's going to have an accent, and that's going to help differentiate him then from X-Men, X, Y, and Z. So those two were definitely my favorites. Playing cards is a cool touch. Again, the backstory is really cool. But that animated series definitely informed most of my X-Men fandom. I remember going back and then seeing older animated stuff. I'm assuming it's not from the 90s. I think it was stuff where they worked with other Marvel heroes. I can't really remember, but I do remember the color schemes changing and whatnot. And no, but Professor X was big too. Mm-hmm. That was something, when you're a kid, I don't know if this can sound insane, but like somebody in a wheelchair with power is certainly like that was when you're a kid and you start seeing and sort of being cognitive disabilities and things like that. That's something very important, that we saw somebody be a leader with a disability. And although all these other, mutants under him had the physical power, it was real. It was straight and overt. He had mental power that succeeded anything physical. And he was disabled physically. So he relied totally on his mental prowess, and I do think that sort of permeated and sort of informed some of my social views. Seeing, oh, this guy's in a wheelchair and he can do everything. And I think with cartoons, I think that's good. And again, the whole, how it's a metaphor for homosexuality was in the 60s and 70s, and how you find other people like you. And I think the X-Men, because it's sort of a solidified group of these people, and it's not like Spider-Man or Superman, or that's a bad example because they're different universes. It's not like Spider-Man and Captain America where these things sort of they can live separately. The X-Men, even in its title, it says this is a group of people, this is not just a bunch of one-offs happening. This group matters. The school setting was very interesting. You didn't see that in any of the sort of cartoons I watched there. It wasn't.
And that's what's cool about the school too, is that all these superheroes are like, hey, I'm a superhero, I can fight, and I have powers. But it's cool in the X-Men because yes, they have these powers, but they are trained with these powers from Professor X and some of the higher end mutants to actually show them how to use their powers to the best of their abilities, because they're mutants too. Xavier and Magneto coming from, their own story, learning how to use and control their own powers by working with one another, and then eventually separating and becoming the Brotherhood of Mutants with Magneto, and then the X-Men themselves. So, a lot of credit to the X-Men in the way it was written, because all these other superheroes just, I'm granted these powers, and now all of a sudden I know how to fight and kick ass. Which is one of the things that shows you why the X-Men know how to fight and kick ass, because they were trained properly, which is really cool. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of fans like X-Men. And what you were saying earlier on disabilities, I think lots of kids who may have disabilities, they look at the
And it was presented as such that these people were outcast before these powers were harnessed. That they were not looked at as powers per se, but disabilities.
Correct.
Got shit coming out of my eyes. Like, what the hell am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And it took, Professor X to say, put on a pair of glasses, buddy.
Yeah.
Why don't you try glasses?
Try these Oakleys.
Stop hurting everybody. Just put on some goddamn glasses. But it is. Everybody was different. Again, it was something that even stuck to me to this day. Sort of, it was presented in an overt way, but in a way that is a metaphor, and you can see all these different people coming together for a common good. And that was definitely, the animated series was a very big part.
As the animated series continued, it eventually got canceled and then rebooted. So after that came Evolution, which was a new cast of original characters that were introduced in the X-Men world. You obviously had returning favorites as your Wolverine, Gambit, even Nightcrawler. Were introduced into X-Men Evolution. The span of X-Men Evolution was about 2-3 seasons. It was okay, but it didn't have the grittiness that the original 90s one had. It was more up to date. It was more childish in terms of the lingo and how everyone spoke. It wasn't raw and toxic like the original one was. You can tell that the original one derived a lot of the episodes from a lot of their comics, like Days of Futures Past.
Real source material.
Of course, which is one of the best probably animated episodes you can watch. It's a 2-part span, which is fairly accurate to the comics. There's a little tweaks in there here and there. And as the animation continued, they made video games for the PlayStation because X-Men started to rebuild once the first movie came out. So now we're going to start talking about the X-Men movies. First X-Men movie all the way to X-Men Days of Futures Past, and even the Wolverine movies. So original X-Men, the first X-Men movie was pretty cool. Fans were a little upset because they were in these new leather black suits, but they weren't. They weren't homage to their animated series or their
late
comics.
'90s, early 2000s. Definitely looked that stylistically, the dark, sleek black. But this movie does not get the credit it deserves because it came out a full year before Spider-Man came out, and so people look at Spider-Man as kicking off the comic book movie era that we are in now, that have been going strong for about 15 years. That started with X-Men.
And X-Men
did not
forget that.
X-Men didn't do as well as Spider-Man in the box office, but there was hype there, and it lived up. And not only that, they have pretty hot actors and actresses at the time. Halle Berry her career was on the upswing. Hugh Jackman, although I don't think was a household name yet, was a real actor. And I think the black suits and whatnot, at the time, can be considered a positive because it meant they weren't going for a campy, super... Because we were only 3 years removed from Batman, Batman and Robin was the last one, right? We were only 3 years removed from that movie, which was super campy, which was self-aware, but in the worst way possible.
Clearly motivated to sell toys rather than create a movie.
And it obviously didn't do well in the box office, and diehard comic fans didn't like it, and moviegoers didn't like it. That movie was for nobody. This movie was presented to be for everybody, and the way to help to distinguish that at the box office and in advertising was, this is a more serious look. And I think this needed to be a more serious movie and a more serious tone. Now, could you make a serious tone with Wolverine dressed the way he was in the animated series? Probably, but I think in the year 2000 they made this as palatable as possible for the general public, and I think it worked. I went to see it with my mom. She was as interested as I was. Again, it was an ensemble cast. There was not, heavy lifting on any one character, although X-Men, or Wolverine, I should say, was undoubtedly the star. I think that was a good choice, but this movie, I think, opened the floodgates. And if you're going to trace anything back to this golden age of comic book movies we're in now, I think that X-Men in the summer of 2000 was it. Because it did well, it followed up on the hype, and it gave fans, although not, perfect one-to-one translation of the comic, it gave something that was far less campy and way more serious in tone than the previous things we've seen on the big screen.
And what's great about the X-Men movies is that the story is told through Wolverine, which is, the stranger coming into this X-Men world, and who are these guys? Because he's obviously older than everyone because he's been around for 200 plus years. So going into that universe and being, well, wow, there are more people like me with these abilities, and these people are for the greater good, and let me figure out what side I'm on. And the second one, X-Men 2, was pretty cool because that was the first X-Men where all the mutants were saying, hey, we're mutants, we need to work together because now the government is trying to destroy us because we're mutants. And the second one is kind of homage to some of the early renditions of the comics where Magneto and Xavier are friends and team up, as well as the other X-Men communicating with one another. And the second X-Men was a little bit of a Wolverine origin story, figuring out, with his flashbacks, how I got these metal claws, what's happening here. And it was also the introduction to Nightcrawler with a great opening scene of him infiltrating the White House, which is a huge fan favorite. Downside was to the second one, the ending was left open, which is kind of a downside. People didn't know what was going to happen because the second one, I don't think, did as well as the first one, but it still left it open at the end with Jean Grey becoming Phoenix. And it took a while for the third one to come along. And the downside to the third one is randomly Nightcrawler disappears, Mystique is there, and then they introduce Beast. And I know...
Well, they kill off
Cyclops in the beginning.
Almost immediately.
Almost immediately. And most people aren't fans of Cyclops because he gets extremely corny in the comics. Well, with the new rebooted comics, in terms of the Avengers vs. X-Men.
He's a fan favorite, though.
Oh, for sure. He definitely got boosted into more of a badass look in the newer comics that we see today. So the downside to the third one was they didn't introduce Nightcrawler. They didn't keep Nightcrawler because they said there's too many blue characters, then people would get confused. Well, I don't think the fans would have gotten confused because they each have separate powers and everybody knows who's who. Downside to the third one was it was pretty much a love story between Jean Grey and Wolverine. The last action scene didn't really build up to what all the fans wanted to see. It was more of a mess with little bits and snips of each of the characters fighting. I think we really wanted to see more of a mutant versus mutant battle between the Brotherhood of the Mutants and then the X-Men, but just more of like a swashbuckling group of mutants and Magneto, and then Jean Grey fighting against the X-Men. All in said, Wolverine ends up killing Jean Grey because he stops her, and Rogue ends up taking the shot to become human again and to leave her X-Genoid. And that's where the X-Men comes from. It's actually from the X-Genoid DNA. So third one kind of was a huge disappointment for most fans.
We got the instantly memeable "I'm Juggernaut, bitch" soundbite. That was like one of the first things. Now this was 2006. This movie came out. This was right when YouTube was getting popular, and I remember that line being, juxtaposed on many other videos. And I don't really know why that line was the one that stuck, but that was one of the first viral things on YouTube. That line and sort of the incarnations of it and putting it in different places to be funny.
That was one of the...
It reached the zeitgeist, and that movie was also, it was almost universally not liked by everybody. We became at a time when people were putting reviews on YouTube, or the internet was just more connected in a way that it almost was immediate. The reaction was, this wasn't as good as X2. And then after the reaction for this, I think people started putting up X2 and X1 in high regard. And people were distancing themselves from this. So this was the first falter in the X-Men landscape. But luckily, they didn't give up after this movie.
They didn't give up after that because we were hit with probably the most successful X-Men franchise, minus the Wolverine spinoff, which was pretty much a mumble of junk and pretty bad because it did get leaked before it even came out.
And that is another big thing in lore. That was a movie that, until then, not a lot of people were talking about, or I have this... There's, of course, movies that were traded around at conventions and via DVD and VHS, but this was online and everybody was talking about, oh yeah, this movie leaked without the special effects. It sucked. And that really helped deter people from going to it once it came out, even though the people weren't necessarily giving it a fair shake because you're watching a cut that wasn't even ready for public consumption.
Of course.
But that's another sort of oddly, big thing in popular culture. That was something that a lot of people knew leaked, heard bad news about it before it was even out in theaters, and that movie was sort of doomed from the start because of that.
Of course. That same thing happened to Iron Man too, how it was leaked and didn't get critically acclaimed or do well. So Wolverine was kind of a big mess. The CGI wasn't there. They kind of destroyed Deadpool at the end with Ryan Reynolds and covering his mouth because he is the merc with the mouth. And then we had the follow-up, actually, to that was the Wolverine before Days of Futures Past came out. And I really enjoyed the Wolverine movie by itself because it was a good standalone movie for Hugh Jackman. It did teach you a lot about the Wolverine that you didn't see. It showed you how he went on his own and try to figure out his own way after he leaves X-Men 3 to find out what his purpose is now, because I guess he lost one of the many loves of his life. But it was really cool because it did take the Japanese storyline in the comic books, which is one of the huge fan favorites. Some people are a little disappointed with the way the Silver Samurai was, but let's be honest, are you really going to have a guy in a modern time walking around in a samurai suit fighting X-Men? So the storyline of him trying to take his unwanted healing power was kind of interesting. Didn't hit for some fans. I enjoyed it because the film was done well. The only thing I really would love to see out of that movie come to fruition was, we obviously know he hooked up with the Japanese lady, so it would be cool to see maybe Dakin make an appearance, because he obviously slept with this woman, and we know that Dakin is, the offspring of this Japanese lady and Logan, which is pretty exciting. So maybe we'll see him in the X-Men Apocalypse movie. Maybe we'll see him in the next Wolverine spin-off movie. But after the Wolverine came out, and what was really cool about Wolverine was the ending scene to that, where Marvel had a little input and said, why don't you kind of lean it into, the next Days of Futures Past, which is probably to date the best X-Men movie that has come out, with a much awaited Apocalypse that we'll see next summer. So Days of Futures Past, I think,
First
nailed
Class.
it.
You missed
Oh yeah, I'm
Class.
sorry.
You missed the most important.
First Class then came out
And that
before
and that
Wolverine.
reignited a lot of fandom.
Of course.
A lot of people were down after that Wolverine debacle. A lot of people didn't go see it. I didn't go see First Class in the theaters. This was something I saw when I hit DVD. But First Class was good. It was directed by Matthew Vaughn of Lunatic fame. A great movie with Daniel Craig if you haven't seen it. And it was phenomenal. It was the X-Men origin story I think we all wanted. It was a period piece, which was really cool to see. I love when... It's one of my favorite now distinguishing trademarks of these X-Men movies is
and they wore their blue and
pieces.
yellow suits, which was huge for the fans. They finally got to see their original blue and yellow suits and where they came from.
And it acted as a reboot without totally whitewashing all the previous movies. It was, see how all this started, and then as we go into Days of Future Past, they found a very creative way to say, oh, you know all that bad shit you don't like? Don't worry, it didn't happen. So First Class was, I think First Class is the first in what looks to be like a good trilogy, a very solid trilogy, and if, you know, Apocalypse pulls off what we all hope it will, it looks like it may be the most solid comic book trilogy, you know, that we've seen so far.
And what's really cool about the Days of Futures Past and its relation to First Class is that Days of Futures Past pretty much wipes out, I mean, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, Days of Futures Past pretty much wipes out all the events of X-Men 3, which is pretty cool because lots of people did not like that one and did not like the way it ended. So Days of Futures Past at the end, when Logan wakes up at the end, Cyclops is there again, Jean Grey is there again, which is really cool because the way they kind of killed him off was like, well, she's supposed to be one of the most powerful beings, and Scott is one of the main leaders of the X-Men, and you just kill them all. So it was kind of nice and a happy ending for most of the X-Men fans, because they're like, oh, okay, good. They pretty much just erased 3, and I really think Bryan Singer had this idea to do that, because he knew how poorly 3 did. So he's like, well, if we can create Days of Futures Past and do it right, we can erase the problems that we created in X-Men 3, which is pretty much what he did. Now, we have coming up X-Men Apocalypse, which is pretty cool. It's going to take place in the 80s, as you can see from some of the things we post on the website. A lot of the original mutants will be in it, but obviously in younger forms. You have Jean Grey will be in it. Nightcrawler's going to be in it. Pretty much all the cast from X-Men First Class will be remaking an appearance in it, as well as a new revamped Angel, which you can see some of the images online that we have posted too, and you can just Google images of them. There is a new Angel that we'll see in it who will probably become the Archangel and be bad and work for Apocalypse, which is pretty cool. So the new X-Men Apocalypse will also have, who's being extremely successful with Ex Machina, will have Oscar Isaac actually portray
He's a phenomenal
Apocalypse,
actor.
which will be cool because that summer is going to be his summer. He's going to be coming out in X-Men as well as Star Wars. So pretty cool. Mad props to him. He's doing something great. People love.
These last few movies have been cast tremendously well. One, you got Jennifer Lawrence, who ended up, you know, becoming the huge superstar that she is. And then this last one, you had Peter Dinklage, which was, again, expertly cast. And I don't want to keep going back to, like, the disability thing, but it was a movie, he was a little person, where that played zero into the plot. And he just acted the shit out of that role, and there's no mention made to his height. And I don't know if that's by coincidence or not, but the X-Men, again, continue to, you know, provide a great metaphor to the world and, like, what disabilities mean and what they mean outwardly, but what is the true consequence of it? And so I loved his role. Hugh Jackman, more of a star now, and he helps carry that movie along with Jennifer Lawrence. And then Nicholas Hoult as a young beast was amazing. And I'm slipping my mind as the Quicksilver actor's name. But that scene where he's running around in the, what's the White House kitchen?
The Pentagon.
In the Pentagon, that scene was amazing. And it's up there. I think it might be my favorite scene in a comic book movie of all time. Certainly when you count the music with it, it was just beautifully crafted. I could watch that scene over and over again. So what you're seeing is good filmmaking in these X-Men movies finally. And I'm excited for Apocalypse because it seems like it's going to be on a huge scale. And I hope they pull off the action well because the one, it got a little dicey at the end of Days of Future Past when it was just all that crazy action and Alan Page was shooting stuff, and then there was 3 or 4 other people that I didn't even know were in this movie. We're now playing key roles, but I easily excuse that because, again, going back to the 70s was such a cool thing, and sort of seeing those landmarks and the political implications of the X-Men were real. It was put front and center, and I love when superhero movies, you know, have a purpose, have a theme, and mirror real life and real politics. So that was great.
And what's cool about Apocalypse is they did cast a lot of younger characters of Jean Grey than what was Sophie Turner. I'm looking this up on my phone, obviously. Nicholas Hoult will return as Beast. Another fan favorite will return, which is Rose Byrne will be reprising her role as that agent character who had her mind erased from Professor X at the end of First Class. So she will be remaking an appearance. I can't wait to see what her involvement is. I mean, she's great to look at. We all know that. Jennifer Lawrence will reprise her role as Mystique. Michael Fassbender will be coming back as Magneto. Rumored is going to be Gambit as Channing Tatum, as well as Wolverine making an appearance from Hugh Jackman in the X-Men Apocalypse. I, without a doubt, believe that they will be coming back, because it wouldn't make sense if they didn't, or were introduced Gambit, because Gambit is supposed to get his own solo movie with Channing Tatum reprising this role, which is important, and I think it would be cool to finally see the Gambit that
people want
to see. Yeah, he was kind of whitewashed, not done very well at all in X-Men Wolverine Origins. Evan Peters is the guy who played Quicksilver. He will be making a return, and I know he's going to have a significant role in X-Men Apocalypse. Olivia Munn has been also spotted with purple hair, so she will be playing Psylocke, which is the energy emulsion blaster mind reader, which is cool. She has been spotted with purple hair. You see her out; she's wearing hats and stuff to cover
argue with
up.
Olivia Munn and purple hair, ladies and gentlemen.
And we love to see Psylocke because she's a huge fan favorite. Cody Smith McPhee will be playing a young version.
Who?
Was a tongue twister.
Cody Scott Smith McKee?
Scotty Scott
Scotty
McPhee
Scotty
will be playing a young version of Nightcrawler, which is cool. So we will see a new introduction of Nightcrawler. And then Lucas Till coming back as Havoc. Cyclops Scott casted as a younger Ty Sheridan. And then we're also going to see a younger Storm, which is cool because Halle Berry kind of got pretty annoying after the second one. I think she had a lot of problems with how much money she was going to get paid or whatever, how much screen time she was having. But she killed it in the first 2. After that, I didn't really care to see Storm. She kind of bothered me more than anything else, which is, I mean, what most people would probably agree upon. So they are going with a younger group of X-Men here, which is kind of exciting. And then recent news is Wolverine 3 will come out. Most people don't know the time frame that will be, but it is rumored that in the Deadpool movie that Ryan Reynolds is going to be in, he is pretty good friends with Hugh Jackman, and Ryan Reynolds even went up and asked Hugh Jackman, I think you should make an appearance in this movie, pretty much to save what happened in X-Men Origins. Now, Deadpool being in X-Men Origins was an early stage of Deadpool, so it's possible that we may see that Deadpool get his mouth permanently cupped open so he can be that merc with the mouth. They also casted Colossus, which will be in the Deadpool movie too. So it will be kind of interesting to see if they intertwine the Deadpool movie, the Gambit solo movie, and Apocalypse to be one movie, because there is a time where Deadpool fights with the X-Men for a while and aids them in the battle. So I think it would be pretty cool to see if, you know, they intertwine those 3 movies like they did with the Wolverine movie. Now, have some trivia here for J. Paul, since he is a newcomer here to a lot of the particular X-Men that some of us may not be aware of and what their powers are. So I'm going to start off easy with you and get you with some of these questions, and then we'll see how you do at the end. So the first one's first, going to be pretty easy. Most of you guys will know this. I hope you know this, J. Paul. Magneto has the power to control what element?
Metal.
Correct.
Magnets. I love that scene. Is that the end of the first one where they're playing chess with not metal?
The plastic ones.
Yeah, I thought that was a phenomenal final scene.
Now this is another one. This may get you. What X-Men has the power to create portals and send himself or somewhere and anywhere?
I feel like this.
Is
this in a movie?
One. Yes, he uses his powers in the movie, or he or she uses his power in the movie. What X-Men has
But you
the power?
said he before, and now I don't know. Is it Kitty Pryde? I want to say it's her.
No,
because
So
she's Ellen Page. She can do anything.
So the X-Men that has powers to create portals and send them anywhere is Blink.
Never even heard.
You see her in Days of Futures Past. She's the one who makes the portals for them to jump through.
Oh, I thought that was just part of Kitty's thing.
Okay, true or false? X-Men mutant power is an indestructible metal called adamantium.
Say it again?
So Wolverine's power is an indestructible metal called adamantium. True or false?
Well, that's what the claws are made out of, so true.
It's false.
Well,
His mutant power...
That's just bullshit semantics.
His mutant power is his healing factor.
Yeah, but claws are not a power. They're not. They don't come in handy if you're like pleasuring yourself. But outside of that, they're a power.
Okay. Which X-Men has the ability to store energy? I'm going to give you multiple choice for this. Has the ability to store energy and release it at will. Your questions I'm going to give you are Gambit, Rogue, Bishop, or Cable. Has the ability to store energy and release it at will.
Store energy. Well, I don't... Gambit controls energy.
So that marks off Gambit. So you have Rogue, Bishop, and Cable.
Rogue... I think I would have known that if it was Rogue. But it would make sense because she controls weather, right?
No, that's Storm.
No, that's Rogue.
Rogue touches you and consumes your power.
Oh, well then that might make sense. Let's go with Rogue.
It's Bishop.
I don't know who Bishop is.
Bishop is the guy in X-Men Days of Futures Past who says, Storm! And he zaps him and he uses the energy and puts it into his gun. And he shoots it.
So he was part of the group of X-Men. I didn't know who they were.
He was part of
the
Bishop
fighters.
was originally a part of the X-Force, which involved Cable, Psylocke, and some other X-Men as the comics continue. Okay. Which of the following X-Men cannot read minds?
Okay.
Xavier?
He can.
Xavier, Jean Grey,
She can.
Psylocke, or Magneto?
Magneto.
You got it.
Because he can control magnets. Don't let him near your fridge, ladies and gentlemen. He'll just mess everything up. Spelling test right there.
All right. Now this is a family tree question here. Who was a part? Which group of characters or mutants would you say is a part of the Summers family?
Is Summers a name?
Summers is their last name in terms of mutant. So
you're gonna have to give me some multiple choice.
So it's a group. It's three X-Men that I have written down that are actually all related to one another, and their last name is Summers.
Are there any of the main X-Men?
Yes. One is one of the leaders.
I think that is Cyclops.
He's one. Who are the other two?
Oh, I need to know I got one. That's
one of the family members. There's two more. Think about First Class.
Beast? Jennifer Lawrence?
The Summers family consists of Havoc. You see him in First Class. He's the one who has the big chest plate. That
okay, I know the name.
Cyclops and Cable.
Cable.
Right? Okay. Magneto has two kids. What are their names? And what are their powers?
Carl and Jennifer. And Carl's he can read at an 8th grade level even though he's in 5th grade. And Jennifer, she shaved her head once and it never grew back, so she wears wigs.
All right. Well, I like the comedic element is great. I love it, J. Paul. But they are, of course, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
And that's referenced in the last movie. But it's not outright.
It's not out. There's kind of like a little joke about it. There's a little joke about it where Quicksilver says, "Oh, my mom used to date a guy who played with metal."
Yeah.
So that was a little homage to him being related, and they actually just.
But they're gonna do it, right?
They actually just debunked it. I'm assuming they will. I don't think they will because Scarlet Witch is now part of the Marvel universe, and that brings up the whole Fox and Marvel rights to characters.
Screw that. They're better. They were better in Days of Future Past, or
Quicksilver was,
that's
yeah,
what I mean.
for sure.
And he wasn't. Well, maybe you're right though, because they just.
But it was actually debunked. They actually debunked it recently in a comic. It's not really debunking. It was just kind of something that they did So they actually used the Marvel Universe element of what they said in the movie and said that they were created. So they actually just recently came up with that again in a recent
they were
comic.
just doing that to save their movie.
Yeah, and they're kind of, Marvel's probably exactly what J. Paul said, probably trying to save that because after Secret Wars, if you comic readers out there know, Secret Wars is recreating the entire Marvel Universe. So these things that Marvel is planning is to correct the lineage between the Marvel Universe as well as the movies that they're creating. So that's our little X-Men spiel. Like, comment, tell us what your favorite X-Men is. We want to know. Share, follow us on YouTube, Lunatic Creative. Follow us on Twitter, @LunaticCreative. Check out our Instagram, lunatic_creative on Instagram. And check our website out and our Facebook. If you haven't subscribed, like, share, comment, post, do whatever. That is our exclusive X-Men episode. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sean Davis, and this is...
Avengers Assemble!
I don't know what the X-Men was. X-Men, roll out!